Mike, check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and I am making the most of this Sunday by just handling a few errands. But I'm also just, listening to news and always trying to catch up on just current events whenever I am busy. And I heard on the news the other day where it's talking about the current dating market, the current dating situation for younger folks in their 20s and even into their 30s, and the role that video games plays in this. And I think I've touched on this topic before on the channel, but I figured, while I'm going through and I'm just finishing up some sorting, I touch on it here again. So the common theme or thought process is that there is a disparity between young men and young women in terms of their options and, their overall social lives between 20 and 30. The thought process is that young women in their 20s lead much more vibrant social lives than men in their 20s. This is because for women, when they're in their 20s, they are typically at their peak, or what some would consider, this is just what I'm hearing in the news articles, right? Women are in what many would consider their peak, in their prime. Prime in terms of their beauty, prime in terms of their fertility, prime in terms of just a lot of things. And because of that, women are often provided with more opportunities to do more social things, to be more social, to be out and about. And so in their 20s, women are usually out, whether it be eating, partying, traveling. They lead more just vibrant lives. Whereas, young men in their 20s, they don't have as many options simply because they're in their more formative years, right? They're in the building phase of their life. They are working, they're in school, and because they don't have resources or the types of resources that they'll have in their 30s if they continue to work and grind, the thought process is that those young men don't have those same vibrant social lives that young women have. And young men spend more of their time at home, playing games, and pretty much doing, pretty much nothing, right? Because, for the most part, they can't afford it. And I know for me, like, even when I was in my 20s, I was in school, I went away to school, I was in undergrad, but for me, my social life, wasn't that, it wasn't non-existent, that's for sure, but I spent a lot of my time working. I had 2 jobs when I was in undergrad. I was definitely more focused on making money when I was in undergrad. So I didn't really even have a desire to go out like that, because I was spending more of my time working and saving money. And part of saving money was playing video games, because video games, for the most part, are very inexpensive, especially back then. Once you purchase the game, you could pretty much chill in your dorm room or chill in your apartment and just play video games on a Saturday night and then go to bed, right? Like, you're not having to worry about spending a bunch of money, buying gas, traveling, none of those things, because you're just playing video games, which for the most part are relatively cheap and inexpensive. And that's how a lot of young men, spend their time or that's how I spent a lot of my time when I was an undergrad. For young women, especially if, you are an attractive young woman, odds are you're going to be invited to places, right? Like, people are going to invite you out. They're going to ask you if you want to go out. And this is where the opportunity comes from for a lot of young women to even have those social experiences, because it doesn't cost them as much, because usually there's someone willing to pay their way to be able to enjoy their company. And so this is kind of the dynamic that we see between the two groups when you think about young men and young women. Now, I think that for some young men, if you're using video games to occupy your time while you're grinding, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as you are on a steady grind, as long as you are building towards something, and as long as you don't become a social hermit, right? Like, you still need to have some type of social life. You should still be able to interact with people. You should still be able to, get in a group of people and be able to socialize and hold conversations and do, pretty much a lot of the normal social activities that we see in society. But again, the bigger thing is the games should just be kind of like an outlet. They shouldn't be everything you do. Your time shouldn't be completely taken up just with video games to the point where you can no longer function in society. But I think what we're seeing is, especially with the pandemic, right? There was an entire generation that never really got the opportunity to go out and have a social life between the age of, say, 18 and 22 because of lockdown. So you have to think about the 18-year-olds that were graduating from high school in 2020, right? For the first 2 years of their pretty much adulthood, they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't socialize, they couldn't do anything, and a lot of what they did was online. And you have to think about the impact that it had on young men. And a lot of young men and old men as well, men like myself, we turn to video games. We turn to video games to take up a lot of our time. And if you were social before the pandemic, it probably didn't take much for you to be able to get back on that social horse once the restrictions lifted. But there was a huge constituents of young men who have had somewhat of a failure to launch, which in part has been aided by video games. And so now we're seeing where you have these young men who don't really want to engage with, their female counterparts, because they don't feel, in a sense, they don't feel good, not good enough, but they just don't feel like they have the social skills, right, to be able to entertain their female counterparts. And they've just kind of fallen back and sort of relied on video games to kind of fill that void, that social void. And I know this isn't everyone, and I'm not speaking in general terms here. I'm not speaking to everyone, right? We know that this isn't the case for all young men, but it's something that's popping up on the news, and I'm hearing a lot of talk about the young men of this generation and their inability to lead the same type of social lives that their female counterparts are. And I'm well past that point in life, right? So I'm really kind of leaning towards the commenters to see, is there any truth to this? I guess I'm kind of speaking more towards the younger audience here. Is there any truth to this? Do you find that a lot of your female counterparts do lead more social lives than you? Do you find that you spend more of your time playing video games than actually getting out there and doing things? Is there any truth to what we're seeing in the news when it comes to what they're saying about this younger generation, the Zoomer generation, or even the generation after it? I'm really curious to know. I'll talk more about this in my more formal video. Perhaps I'll come with some more stats and some more data from what I'm seeing here. But I think it makes for an interesting topic, especially when you consider video games factoring into all of this. It's the Y2K Collector. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know your comments. Let me know what you'd like to hear on this topic, because I am going to kind of touch on it a little bit more later on, and give me some points that you have, and I'll hopefully be able to respond to some of those comments. Alrighty. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday, making the most of it. I'm cleaning, getting things ready here. I'm a little late on the spring cleaning, but you got to do it sometime. Alrighty. I'll see you this afternoon. Take it easy.